thank you so much for joining this World Happiness Agora. Having you here means so much because we need moonshots.
Yes, we do.
And if somebody knows about moonshots, is you. How do we actually make out of happiness a moonshot? How can we maximize happiness at work?
Mm-hmm. I think it's important to start by recognizing how much we need happiness in our world today. How sometimes we sort of hide our heads in the sand and we try to tell ourselves that everything's okay, but it isn't. I mean, I normally talk about what I call 1 in 4. One in 4 people that you deal with in the fast-paced Western or modern world is clinically depressed. That's a very, very high ratio. That doesn't even count the people that are just very unhappy but did not get diagnosed. One of every 4 people you will ask in the modern world will tell you that when they feel unhappy, any level of unhappiness, they have absolutely no one, not a single soul to turn to. And of course, as you can see, the mix of those two statistics together is leading us to a situation where we are suffering from the highest ever in history rates of suicide rates of teenagers. And the idea is, as I always try to explain, that suicide is not just a result of unhappiness, it's a result of unhappiness mixed with despair. So people who are unhappy and are unable to find anyone to help them throughout that process. And that's where we get 1 in 40 seconds. We lose 1 human life every 40 seconds around the world to suicide. We have a problem. And, on the bright side, however, when you think about it, happiness is a wonderful state of productivity and success and integration. And people who are happy, they work better, they perform better, they don't report absent from work, they don't just sit there and browse social media while they're supposed to be doing work for our company. I think the idea that most businesses forget is that happiness at work is not a luxury. It's you don't want to make your employees happy just because you're a nice person. You want to make your employees happy because that is what would make your company successful. When I worked at Google for 12 years. The idea of Google attempting to make employees happier was not just because of the kindness of Larry and Sergey, our founders. It was basically the smart thing to do. Happy employees, made sure that they attracted their friends to work. We had the selection of the top of all talent in the world. They came, they wanted to stay, they felt innovative, and even simple things like offering lunch or reducing their trip back in and out of work for lunch or offering them laundry at work basically meant that they stayed at work longer. They chatted with people, and what did they chat about? They chatted about work. The cost of a free lunch is much, much, much cheaper than the cost of a man hour or a woman hour, where people would have to waste that hour outside our premises. Instead, if they are in Charlie's Cafe, as we always said, they're inventing something. Happiness at work is, I think, a necessity, and we can talk about many, many ways we can make it happen. But tell me first, where would you like us to, how would you want us to address this? Where would you want, to individuals, to managers, to leaders, to HR? Who's talking? Who wants to know about this?
I think that probably everybody wants to know about this, but when we go through your book, How to Solve for Happy, I think that you talk about traps, you talk about truths. Mm-hmm. You have even a formulation of what to do about it. I think that it's very important that we address happiness for managers. Mm-hmm. That most people leave companies because of the manager.
Yeah, exactly.
Managers would be great.
Yeah.
But I think that this is a topic that is relevant for everybody. So why don't we talk about traps? Why don't we talk about truths? And actually, why don't we talk about how to solve for happiness?
Solving for happy is an individual choice, and I think it's great that you look at it from that point of view, because no company will ever make you happy. What companies can do is they can stop making you unhappy. That's really as far as they can go. And the entire staff of leaders and managers, and which are different, by the way, managers and leaders, and the entire HR team, they can only think positively to remove the obstacles in the way of your happiness. If that is done, happiness itself then becomes your own choice. You cannot make happiness, make anyone happy. You can only remove the reasons for them to be unhappy. Now, let's talk about that for a few minutes. Let's talk about your own individual choice first. As an individual, we humans have never had it better. So sometimes we forget that. Health care is at its best. Our life expectancy is at its best. Instead of having to go out hunting for a big elephant or a wild a bull or whatever, you just walk into a supermarket aisle and you browse items that have very clear instructions on them. Maybe not the healthiest of food, but obviously life has become easier and easier, and yet we've become less and less happy. Now, this is not because happiness, because our life is difficult. It's because happiness actually is not the result of how life is at all. There is a lot of research that will tell you that you can tell me 100%, 90% about your life situation, and that would only inform me about 10% of your state of happiness. The truth is, happiness is not about the events of our life. It's about our expectations as well. So in my happiness equation that I describe in Solve for Happy, I say that happiness is equal to or greater than the difference between the events of your life and your expectations of how life should behave. Now, that at work becomes a very, very interesting approach, which basically means that if your expectations that your manager is going to be the nicest person ever and never give you trouble and never ask you to work hard, you may want to ask yourself if your unhappiness is the result of your manager being, a little demanding or sometimes annoying, or is it because your expectations are unrealistic? I mean, think about it this way. Managers are annoying. As much as we don't want to admit it, but, somehow the system chooses annoying people to be managers. I was one myself, so I say that with love and respect for everyone. But yes, I mean, you have to push people, you have to be demanding, and you have to a little bit sometimes be a little, dissatisfied with results so that you can perform better. A good manager has a responsibility to the company, and so they try to deliver on that. So if your expectation is that your manager is going to be the nicest person on earth and never really, annoy you at all, then good luck with that. I spent 30 years in the corporate world. And of those, I had one nice manager. I'm not going to say which one so that all of them call me and ask. But, I had one easy, nice, easygoing, nice manager. So with that in mind, the idea of events minus expectations makes you as an individual make that choice. Now, let me give you that in context of how how this applies at work. I worked at Google for 12 years, as I said, happiest place still until today, most, aspire to work at, as a company. And I remember an episode where the engineers in one of our engineering offices complained bitterly that the coffee machine did not fill the mug all the way to the top. It only filled the mug 2/3 of the way to the top. And as engineers, you can imagine, highly intellectual, they started to submit a case to HR that was discussing in detail how that costs them somewhere around, 1/3 of a trip more to the coffee machine every few hours, which basically impacted their productivity in so many interesting ways. And HR came to me panicking, asking for a budget to change the coffee machines or whatever they wanted to do. And I said, no, just remove the coffee machine for a couple of days and everyone will be happy again. right? And the truth is very straightforward. The idea is, if you take what you have for granted, most of the time, nothing is going to make you happy. Okay, and it's not a secret that in those coffee places at Google, we had coffee, chocolate, fresh fruits, dried fruits, nuts, and every snack you wanted. Yet they could manage to focus on the third of the coffee that should have filled more in the mug. Now, by that, I'm not asking for anything other than to say, regardless of what your company is going to do, your happiness is your own responsibility. Now, let's talk about what companies should do. As I said, a company can only stop making you unhappy. There is really nothing they can do to make you happy, but they can do a lot to stop making you unhappy. And I think that the core of this is to recognize a difference between management and leadership, because they're not one and the same. Now, managers are, as we evolve in our development in life, we become results-oriented and action-oriented, and we focus on numbers, and we focus on how to get the most efficiencies and so on, and we become managers. Managers are the people that push you from the back. They're like constantly saying, oh, do more, right? If you do that, you have to become annoying. If you really want to create a happy organization, what you want to do is to become a leader. And leaders, they walk in the front. What they do is they basically live the change they want to see. They apply the conditions they want to apply to others, to their own selves. And they lead from the front. They give people a mission that we all align on. So I'll always go back to the context of the happiness equation. Events minus expectations. Most employees will join an organization with the expectation that their work is going to fulfill them. How can any work fulfill anyone if that work is not aligned with their value system? So for a leader to have a clear value system, a clear mission, a clear impact that is desired by his organization or her organization is something that has to be set, clear, and communicated. Now, what that will do is it will attract people to your organization that actually want to live that value system, and it will take the ones that don't agree with that value system away and put them in another organization, and the ones that will remain will be people that are happy every day because they wake up and they feel fulfilled that they are aligned with the value system of the company. 2, events minus expectations. A leader is fully transparent. So believe it or not, the number one reason why people get upset with companies, with their managers or with the company at large, is that things are not clear. You know how we've been trained in the corporate world to stand there and repeat slogans like, oh, people are the most important thing in my organization, or like, our stand with regards to this topic is ABC, like a machine, like a robot. That is totally not what people want. People will detect if what you're telling them is not true, and the events will miss their expectations, because when you don't tell them the truth of the events, they're just gonna gossip about it, and the gossip will be much, much worse than the actual truth. And I learned through my career, when people asked me a question, to answer truly from my heart, even if I sometimes disagreed with the values of the or with the actions of the company, because I was always aligned with the values of my company, but actions sometimes we disagree. And believe it or not, I had a technique where if I really could not say what's in my heart because there is a very critical action happening on behalf of the company, I would answer people by saying, I apologize, but I cannot answer this question. The statement of the company is clear, and I will tell you that I don't fully agree with it, but we will all march in accordance with the company. That idea of transparency is incredibly valuable from a leader. The third is the idea of the idea of being able to use that transparency to set events and expectations in accurate pace. So basically what I mean by that is review cycles objective setting cycles. All of those things upset people. They upset them because you come at the end of the quarter and you give them a certain rating, and that rating, and compared to what they had in mind, is really not fair for them. But if we started the quarter by saying, look, these are the 3 things or the 5 things I need you to achieve, I'm going to do what I can to help you achieve them. And at the same time, if you miss them, here is the rating that we expect. If you make them, here is the rating that we expect. And then at the review period, you have a very open conversation that removes away the mismatch between events and expectations. I could go on, but perhaps I should take a short break and have your comments or questions before I continue on leadership that leads to happiness.
Yes, I mean, I have many comments and questions, but I think it's better that you keep going and you...
Oh, I can go on for hours.
It's so interesting, and I think that you are framing it so well from the insider point of view, because you've been in the corporate world for 30 years. I mean, I have one question is, but I would love to hear more about leadership.
So let's keep going. Let's keep going. So
about illusions.
The other thing that is truly fundamental is that you will never build a happy organization if you're grumpy. Okay. So the number one, as I always tell people, the number one advice I give anyone who wants to make another person happy, or another company happy, or his family happy, or her family happy, is attend to yourself first before you help others. If you do not manage to become happy yourself, work on your own personal happiness yourself, you will not be able to create a happy place. Right? And for that, I normally tell people that happiness truly is like fitness. Okay. So if you as a leader wanna create a happy organization, start going to the happiness gym 3 to 4 times a week. Find an hour a day to watch a video. I have all of the contents of Souls for Happy available online. Spend an hour a day reading a book. There is, mine, but there are incredibly valuable books on the topic out there from all different perspectives: psychology, spirituality, engineering, as per my work, and so on and so forth. Spend an hour a day with people that make you happier or teach you about happiness, people that are actually happy. And leaders have a much bigger responsibility to do that, because it's not about them finding their own personal individual happiness. It's much more about them embodying that happiness to the point where they can actually go ahead and impact the lives of others. One happy leader, in the case of my organization, for example, could lead to 11,000, 12,000 happy employees. Now that's incredibly fundamental. When it comes to the leader that managed to find happiness, remember, my definition of happiness as per the happiness equation is not to have fun and go to a company party and, dress funny for Christmas or whatever. That stuff normally, if the organization is unhappy, it makes it unhappier, because it sort of translates to the employees as, come on, is this all that we're going to get to fix the situation? Now, when I say that you are embodying happiness as a leader, remember the definition of happiness is that contentment, to be okay with life as it is, to be okay with the work as it is. And let me explain that. I've missed one quarter in my life. Okay. So I'm very, very results oriented. I deliver on my targets. Having said that, I never pushed one of my team members if the reason that they missed their target was outside their control. So to understand events minus expectations, sometimes people will come to me and say, Mo, I've been working on this telco for the last year and a half. We were so close to closing the deal, and then the CEO changed, or the chief marketing officer changed, and I don't know what's going to happen now. The deal has collapsed. Okay. Now, I normally, other managers would go like, you did this badly. And normally, I would basically sit down and say, okay, First of all, our expectation should be that we will actually have changes in the organizations we work in. So we might as well, in the future, have more than one contact in the organization, have a multi-level contacts within the organization so that our deals continue. That's number one. Number two, this is a fact of life now. So instead of sitting in a corner and complaining and arguing and discussing our ratings and bonuses and what have you, why don't we sit down and agree, what can we do right now? What can we do right now to make things better? Is a true leader's approach. Instead of blaming and creating negativity, we sit down and we discuss, okay, here is the new truth. Here is the new baseline. What can we do about that? And that probably is my biggest principle of happiness. I mean, a lot of people know that I wrote Solve for Happy when I lost my wonderful son, Ali. And Ali truly was everything to me. He was my son and he was my best friend and he was my coach and he taught me so much. Now, things happen. Sometimes they are as simple as losing a deal or, having a challenge to make something work in a meeting or whatever. And they can be as comprehensive and painful as losing a child. Now, the rules that apply are simply exactly the same. I say, when you realize that something has changed, the events of life or the events of work don't meet your expectations anymore, the first thing you need to ask yourself is this true? Is what my brain telling me true? Or is this just an exaggeration, an illusion that I'm suffering from? If your brain tells you your boss is trying to fire you, ask yourself if you actually have evidence for this, or maybe your boss had a fight at home today before he came to work, right? Maybe your boss is annoyed with her boss, and that's why she's not, really supportive of you today. Now that's, step number one. If it is true, step number two is what I call the entrepreneurship of happiness, which truly is what true successful entrepreneurs do when things go out of control. What do? They simply say, okay, new situation, I wish it was different. What can I do about it? If there is something you can do about it, do it right away. If there isn't, then that comes to my favorite concept of happiness ever, a concept I call committed acceptance. If there is nothing you can do about something like losing a child, I could cry for the next 27 years and still Ali wouldn't come back. So what do you do in those situations? You accept. You accept from a place of strength. You accept, like, I realize that the baseline has changed and I realize that I've done the best that I could. And now is the time for me to respond. Committed acceptance is not about acceptance and, dangling our heads and crying. It's about acceptance followed by commitment. And commitment, perhaps not to change the situation to get it back to where it was, but to make it a little better tomorrow and a little better after tomorrow and a little better after tomorrow, with small increments of work. And that has been my story throughout my life at my career, but also my personal story. When I lost Ali, instead of just locking myself in a room and crying, I decided to sit down and write the happiness model that I learned with him and share it with what originally was a 10 million happy mission. Right? And I told myself, look, I cannot get Ali back, but at least if I got 10 million people to use the model he taught me to find happiness in their life, then I've given them life. And with that, I have honored Ali. I've sent him happy wishes and love, and that would probably be the best thing I could do. Now, that is committed acceptance. And I wake up every morning telling myself that my life's work is to continue to spread Ali's wonderful message around the world. Now, we went from 10 million now to a target of 1 billion happy, and see how that, of course, by the way, even then, it doesn't bring Ali back. When we reach 1 billion happy, Ali will still not be back. But the world will be a much better place than it was, and I will feel in my heart that at least it wasn't for nothing that Ali left our world. Now, apply that to work. When work becomes difficult, sit down like a true entrepreneur. Ask yourself if you can do something about it. And if you cannot, can you accept it and move on? Now, there is one final tip I will say to you back as an individual, not as the leader. And that is part of committed acceptance and part of understanding how life works sometimes demands change. And change is always hindered by fear. And what I mean by that is, if your work is not really making you happy, because I always ask people to make happiness their number one priority, start asking yourself, what would it take for me to find work that makes me happier? There is no point at all in sticking there just because you're afraid you can't find another job. If you can't find another job today, that's fine. Tell yourself, what do I need to do? Maybe attend certain courses or close a certain deal so that it's on my CV or whatever. What do I need to do so that in 6 months from now, I can interview for the job that I want and get it? Don't take a loser's attitude of like, okay, I'm sitting here and complaining about my work every day of my life. Instead, take a winner's attitude and say, look, my company doesn't align with me on my value of happiness. I'm going to find ways to find the company that makes me happy. And because happiness is your number one priority, it may take 6 months, it may take a year, it may take 2 years, as long as you're on that path. Promise yourself that happiness is your priority. So for your next job, you're not going to interview for $100 more. You're going to interview for a job that makes you happier. If you interview for $100 more, you're likely to get that. That's going to become your priority. If you interview for a place that makes you happier, you're likely going to get that. And believe it or not, when you're working in a place that makes you happy, the $100 will come to you in folds. Because when you're happy, you're at your best, you're productive, you're learning, and accordingly, you're growing. Making happiness our priority is probably the number one thing that we need to do in our personal life and at work.
Well, Mo, you're a true example of walking the talk. This is spectacular. We have many HR leaders watching this, and many chief happiness officers that actually are very committed to spread happiness at work and in life. So we are with you for the 1 billion and hopefully for the 10 billion by 2050, because by 2050 we are going to have 3 more billion people on the planet. Right?
Which are easier to keep happy if we can, because children, if we don't make them unhappy, they stay happy.
So this was fantastic.
Thank you.
I recommend everybody to go and get the resources from So For Happy. It's a lot of stuff that you have created there. It is very useful. Do you have a final comment for all these people around the world that are committed to actually to do something else? What is your call to action for people?
Thanks for the opportunity. This is what it's all about, for all of us to get to hold hands and get together and make a difference. And I started by saying 1 in 4, that our world truly needs the change. But I will end by saying our world needs the change with a sense of urgency. And so I ask people to do 3 things to join our 1 billion happy mission. Number 1, learn that happiness is your priority and that you have the right to be happy, that all of the lies of the modern world that we should go through life feeling unhappy are actually not true at all. We were born happy and then we grew out of happiness to become unhappy. We can always go back to that happy, childlike nature of ours and still be productive and still be successful. You can become the chief business officer of Google X like I did and not pay the tax of your success as unhappiness. The number 2 is, as I said, happiness is like fitness. Prioritizing it is important, but working at it is what makes the difference. Go to the gym 4 to 5 times a week, 3 to 4 times a week. Spend an hour a day reading a book, watching a video, or spending time with people that make you happy. Number 3 is, when you're done with that, remember that the biggest problem with our modern world is how individualistically focused we've become. Find the compassion in your heart to say that this is not just about me being happy, it's about me surrounding myself with all the people that I love when their state is happy. So find the compassion in your heart to make others happy. And what I ask people to do is, whatever I said today, if you found any part of it that is useful, tell 2 people, teach them what you learned, make them prioritize their happiness, make them invest in their happiness, and make them promise to tell two others who will tell two others who will tell two others. What I'm trying to do with 1 billion happy is I'm building a very simple exponential function. If every one of us tells two people who tell two people who tell two people, we will get to 1 billion happy in 5 years. Now, this is not my mission. This is the mission of all of us together. And I really, really wish that in 5 years' time, we will have 1 billion people that received the message, that I prioritized their happiness and took action, and that I got completely forgotten because this was not me doing it. It was you doing it. Okay, so many of us can take charge of this. So many of us can be the champions. And with that, we can truly, truly create a happiness world, a happier world, and make our world a better place.
Let's be champions of happiness. Let's be champions of change. Thank you so much.
Thanks for what you're doing, Luis. And yes, 1billionhappy.org. Come join our mission. Solveforhappy.com for all the resources. And yeah, change the world. Thank you.
We're in. You know that. Thank you so much.